Jonathan Hale walked into the private security office expecting a simple interview. A background check, a handshake, paperwork, the usual. He had been retired from the police force for less than a year. He missed the routine. He missed the structure. He wanted something quiet. The hiring manager stepped out with a strange look on his face. Confusion first, then fear, then something Jonathan had never seen directed at a living man. "Sir, we cannot proceed with your application. The database says you are deceased." Jonathan laughed reflexively. Then the manager handed him the printout. Jonathan Hale, born 1971, died 3 months ago. Cause of death, homicide. Jonathan stared at the paper as the world around him dissolved into a muffled blur. His hands shook, his face drained. And for the first time in his 30 years of law enforcement, he felt the sensation he had spent his career chasing in others. He felt the cold weight of fear. Jonathan Hale was standing upright, breathing, talking. But according to the state of Pennsylvania, he had been murdered. If you are new here, subscribe for more true stories that reveal what happens when truth collides with power. Jonathan Hale had always expected retirement to feel strange, but not like this. For 19 years, he worked homicide. Long nights, narrow hallways, crime scene tape, exhausted partners, and coffee that tasted like burnt rubber. He had seen people disappear from the world in violent ways, but having his own death written into a government file felt like a joke the universe was not qualified to make. He drove home holding the printout with trembling fingers. Cars passed him. Neighbors waved. Birds chirped on fences. Everything looked normal. Yet the system declared he no longer existed. Inside his home office, he pulled out documents proving he was alive. Birth certificate, pension letters, IDs, medical forms. Not a single one mattered now. The database always won. Institutions believed computers, not breathing men. He called the county clerk. A woman answered with a polite voice. "Your death certificate is valid, sir. Signed, stamped, recorded." Jonathan felt his pulse spike. "And who reported my death?" There was a pause. "That information is sealed. The case is under homicide review." He hung up. He knew calling the receptionist at his old precinct would get him nowhere. She would panic or call security. He needed raw data. He dialed the precinct's back-end automated records line, a number only active officers knew. He punched in his badge number, 492. He waited for the robotic voice to ask for his password. Instead, the automated system beeped a harsh, flat tone. Badge 492. Status deceased. Case file 78F. Access denied. Jonathan sat in silence. The system had not just made a clerical error. It had processed a case file. Someone had filed a report, assigned a number, and closed his life. Case 78F meant a confirmed homicide found in a transient location. He grabbed his keys. Investigating alone went against every rule he had enforced as an officer, but he had no choice. If the system believed he was dead, someone had made a deliberate effort to erase him. Someone killed Jonathan Hale on paper. And the only lead he had was the location code attached to the file, a motel off Route 19. The Pinecrest Motor Lodge was the kind of place where people vanished in silence. Rusty soda machines, buzzing neon signs, rooms rented by the hour. Jonathan walked into the lobby, his badge tucked into his pocket, his retired ID in hand. The clerk looked bored. When Jonathan asked about the homicide 3 months ago, the man shrugged and told him to leave. Jonathan didn't move. He leaned over the counter and pointed to the clerk's wrist. "That is a Breitling Navitimer, $4,000. Does the IRS know a motel clerk is wearing a year's worth of salary on his wrist? The clerk froze. He pulled his sleeve down quickly. Room 12, the clerk muttered. Guy paid cash. Checked in under the name Hale. Next morning, the room was a slaughterhouse. Jonathan took the key. He walked to room 12. The carpet had been replaced, the walls painted. It looked sterile. A rookie cop would have walked out. Jonathan knelt by the nightstand. The cleaners always scrubbed the visible stains, but they rarely moved the heavy furniture. He pulled the nightstand away from the wall and pried back the baseboard. There it was. Dried, dark red splatter, seeped into the drywall where the bleach hadn't reached. Someone had bled here. A lot. Jonathan called Detective Miller, his former partner. Miller arrived 20 minutes later, looking like he had seen a ghost. "John, I attended your memorial service. The report said your body was recovered." Jonathan pointed to the stain. "Recovered by who? There is no body in the morgue." Miller pulled up the digital summary on his tablet. Report says the body was removed before decomposition by authorized transport due to biohazard concerns. Jonathan shook his head. "That is not protocol. We never outsource body transport unless the coroner is overwhelmed, and 3 months ago was a slow month." Miller frowned. "So someone staged a murder, planted enough blood to sell it, and then hired a private crew to take away a body that did not exist?" Jonathan stood up. "They didn't just want me dead, Miller. They wanted the investigation closed immediately." "If there is a body, we look for a killer," Miller said, realizing the play. "If the body is found and the case is solved or transferred, we stop looking." Jonathan nodded. "They killed me on paper so the police would stop looking for the man using my name." Detective Miller met Jonathan at a quiet diner the next morning. He slid a flash drive across the table. I pulled the full digital file. It was buried deep. Jonathan plugged it into his laptop. The file was thin. Suspiciously thin. No crime scene photos of the face, no fingerprints. Just shots of the blood and the ID on the nightstand. "Look at the billing," Miller said, pointing to the bottom of the screen. Jonathan scrolled down to the transport invoice. Baltimore Valley Storage and Asset Recovery. Jonathan felt his blood run cold. I know this company. 5 years ago, Jonathan had investigated a ring of warehouse thefts, high-value pharmaceuticals and electronics stolen from loading docks. The man running it was Victor Lang. Jonathan had testified against him. Lang lost his business, his reputation, and swore he would burn Jonathan's life down. "Lang," Jonathan whispered. "He owns a storage company now?" "Shell company," Miller corrected. "But look who signed the death certificate. Dr. Owen Ricks." "Ricks is a gambler," Miller said softly. "Vice Squad has a file on him a mile thick. He owes money to everyone in the state." Jonathan closed the laptop. The picture was forming. "Lang didn't kill me for revenge. That is too simple. He is using my name." Miller looked confused. "But you are dead. Your ID is flagged." "Only now," Jonathan said. "Think about the timeline. The death certificate was filed after the incident, but the clerk said the man checked in using my ID before the murder." Jonathan's eyes widened. "Lang spent months using my identity while I was alive. He rented trucks, he signed manifests, he moved stolen goods using the clean record of a retired cop. And when he was done, he killed the identity," Miller finished. "He staged a murder so the police would write off Jonathan Hale as a victim. If I'm a victim, no one investigates me for grand larceny." Miller grabbed his coffee. "He framed you for the thefts, then murdered you on paper to close the file case." Jonathan stood up. "We need to go to Baltimore Valley Storage. If Lang is cleaning up his tracks, that's where the evidence is."
The industrial yard of Baltimore Valley Storage was lined with white panel vans. Jonathan parked down the street, watching through binoculars. He spotted it immediately. Van 404, the same vehicle number listed on the fake coroner's invoice. Jonathan and Miller walked into the front office. A young woman looked up, annoyed. "We are closed for intake." Jonathan didn't waste time. He slammed a photo of Van 404 onto the desk. I just took this picture in your lot. That van is listed on a government invoice for the transport of human remains. I can call the state troopers and have them rip this place apart, or you can talk." The woman paled. She looked at Miller's badge, then at Jonathan's furious face. "I just filed the paperwork," she stammered. "Show me the rental logs for Jonathan Hale," Jonathan commanded. She hesitated, then typed the name into her system. Her eyes widened. "We have 14 rentals in the last 6 months. Heavy haulers, refrigerated units." "Refrigerated," Miller said. "Pharmaceuticals." "And the status?" Jonathan asked. "Account closed," she read. "Client deceased. All records archived." Jonathan leaned in. "Who authorized the closure?" "Mr. Lang," he said, with her voice shaking. "He said the client was murdered and we needed to burn the contracts." It was the smoking gun. Lang had used Jonathan's clean background to move millions of dollars in stolen drugs. When the operation was finished, he faked Jonathan's death to sever the tie. "Where is Lang now?" Miller asked. "He is at the old freight terminal," she said, her voice shaking. "He is clearing out the last shipment tonight." Jonathan turned to Miller. "He thinks I am dead. He thinks the police have closed the file." Miller checked his weapon. "Then let's go give him a surprise inspection." As they walked out, Jonathan looked at the row of vans. Lang had built a multi-million-dollar theft ring on the back of Jonathan's reputation, and he had killed a stranger to do it. Because the blood in that motel room had to come from somewhere. On the ride to the terminal, Miller's phone buzzed. It was the crime lab. "The DNA from the baseboard came back," Miller said grimly. "It's a match for a John Doe reported missing in Ohio. Drifter. No family." Jonathan stared out the window. Lang picked a victim nobody would look for, lured him to the motel, killed him. Used my ID to check in so the blood would be tied to me. Then he paid Dr. Ricks to sign the death certificate without looking at the body, and had his own crew haul the corpse away to be disposed of. It was a perfect circle. The theft, the frame, the fake death, the disposal. Jonathan felt a cold rage. He didn't just erase me, he erased a human being to cover a theft. They arrived at the freight terminal. It was a massive, decaying structure near the river. Rain lashed against the windshield. They moved silently to the side entrance. Inside, the warehouse was dimly lit. In the center of the floor, surrounded by crates, was Victor Lang. He was directing a forklift driver moving pallets marked with medical hazmat symbols. Stolen cancer drugs. High value, untraceable on the black market. Jonathan whispered, "Those manifests, they are signed with my name." Miller nodded. "We need to catch him with the paperwork." They stepped out from the shadows. "Victor Lang," Miller shouted, his voice echoing off the metal walls. "Police!" Lang spun around. He didn't look scared. He looked confused. Then he saw Jonathan. The color drained from Lang's face. He dropped the clipboard he was holding. He looked from Miller to Jonathan and back again. "You're dead," Lang said, cracking. "I saw the file. It's certified." Jonathan stepped into the light. "You trusted the paperwork, Victor. You forgot that ghosts don't stay buried." Lang reached for a pistol tucked into his waistband. "I closed that account," Lang screamed. "You are a dead man." Miller raised his weapon. "Drop it, Lang." But Lang didn't drop it. He fired blindly and ran toward the catwalks. Jonathan didn't hesitate. He sprinted after him. The gunshot echoed like a cannon blast. The bullet sparked off a metal pillar inches from Jonathan's head. He didn't slow down. Lang scrambled up the metal stairs, desperate to reach the upper exit. He was shouting incoherent curses, his perfect plan shattering in real time. Jonathan hit the stairs 2 at a time. His retirement, the quiet life, the paperwork, it all vanished. He was a homicide detective again. Lang reached the top platform and turned, leveling his gun. "Stop! You don't exist!"
The state says you don't exist." Jonathan dove behind a stack of pallets as Lang fired again. "A dead suspect is a closed case," Lang yelled, reloading. "You were supposed to be the perfect victim. No one investigates a corpse for robbery." Jonathan grabbed a heavy metal pipe from the floor. "You made one mistake, Lang. You didn't check the pulse." Jonathan threw a loose bolt to the left. It clattered against the railing. Lang turned and fired at the sound. Jonathan lunged from the right. He swung the pipe, striking Lang's wrist. The gun skittered across the metal grating and fell over the edge, crashing onto the concrete floor below. Lang stumbled back, terrified. "I have the death certificate. It's signed. You can't touch me." Jonathan tackled him. They slammed into the railing, the metal groaning under the impact. Lang clawed at Jonathan's face, desperate and wild. "Paper protects me," Lang hissed. Jonathan pinned him down, arm against Lang's throat. "You thought paper could protect you, but paper burns." Miller and the backup unit stormed the floor below, weapons drawn. "Secure him," Miller shouted from the bottom of the stairs. Jonathan yanked Lang up by his collar. He dragged him to the edge of the catwalk so he could see the police below. "Victor Lang, you are under arrest for grand larceny, insurance fraud, and the murder of the John Doe you used to replace me." Lang went limp. The arrogance evaporated. As officers cuffed him, Jonathan stood alone on the catwalk, catching his breath. He looked down at the clipboard Lang had dropped. The manifest was there. Client, Jonathan Hale. Status, final shipment. Jonathan picked it up. He took a pen from his pocket and drew a thick line through his own name. "Account closed," he whispered. Clearing Jonathan's identity took weeks of legal battles. But this time, he wasn't just a glitch in the system. He was the lead witness in the state's biggest organized crime trial. Prosecutors laid it out clearly. Lang hadn't just committed fraud, he was charged with grand larceny for the pharmaceutical theft and first-degree murder for the drifter he killed to stage the scene. Dr. Owen Ricks turned state evidence immediately. He admitted to taking bribes to sign death certificates for Lang's cleanup operations. He would never practice medicine again. When the judge finally signed the order to expunge Jonathan's death certificate, the courtroom was silent. Jonathan watched the clerk stamp the paper. Status, living. File corrected. Identity restored. He exhaled, a weight lifting from his chest that he hadn't realized he was carrying. He had literally clawed his way back from the grave. Lang was sentenced to life without parole. As he was led out of the courtroom, he refused to look at Jonathan. He stared at the floor, a man defeated by the very person he tried to erase. Outside the courthouse, the air felt different, sharper, cleaner. Reporters shouted questions, but Jonathan walked past them. He found Detective Miller waiting by his car. "Thinking about coming back to the force? We could use a detective who can solve cases from the afterlife." Jonathan smiled but shook his head. "I think I'm done with files, Miller. I've had enough paperwork for one lifetime." He returned to the security firm the next day. The hiring manager who had rejected him was there, looking pale and apologetic. "Mr. Hale, I saw the news. I am so sorry. We would be honored to hire you." Jonathan looked at the man. He thought about the fear he had seen in his eyes that first day, the blind trust in a computer screen over a human being. "I didn't come for the job," Jonathan said softly. "I placed a copy of my restored birth certificate on the counter. I came to remind you of something. When a system tells you a breathing man is dead, you don't trust the system. You check the pulse." He turned and walked out into the sunlight. Jonathan Hale was alive, and for the first time in a long time, he was free. If you believe stories like this deserve to be told, subscribe, and turn on notifications. We tell real cases that expose the human cost of justice and the people who fight to make it right.